United Against Nuclear Iran is a bipartisan group of experts, policy people, activists, coalition that is united in an effort to ensure that Iran does not become nuclear armed.
Ambassador Mark Wallace, a former United States ambassador to the United Nations and the representative for UN management and reform, explained to Washington TV the role of sanctions against Iran.
We're talking about companies that have been doing business in Iran, and if not evading sanctions in actual, by the letter of the law, but in the spirit of the law. There are many companies that have avoided international sanctions, and they are serving to prop up and support, frankly, the regime and its conduct, while at the same time that the regime is diverting billions of dollars to its nuclear program.
Wallace next clarified that the target of concern for Americans was not the Iranian people.
Unfortunately, parts of the Iranian population, the economy, has effectively been taken over by a radical element that is dominating certain businesses and the government. The result of that is that when we try to focus sanctions, we try to focus sanctions on really the controlling leadership of what really is a theocracy in Iran. So really the Iranian people are not the target. It really is the governing regime, the Revolutionary Guard, as an example. I think President Ahmadinejad, or frankly President Mousavi, if he's elected, will have a hard time continuing to explain to the Iranian people who are suffering from high unemployment, inflation, difficult economic times, why that government is diverting billions of dollars to an illegal nuclear program that's serving to isolate it in the international community, while at the same time not engaging on the international scene.
With reference to the post-election street protests against the announced results of the controversial presidential election in Iran, Wallace next went on to explain that now even countries like Russia, which supports Iran against the pressures by the West on its nuclear dossier, understand that the people of Iran want change.
Well, I think that, as you know, particularly as the example is what's happening in the Iranian street right now with the incredible speed of modern communication, and with activists and people that are really interested in the type of change that we seek from Iran. I think that there's the potential for even governments like Russia, but certainly governments like in Europe, to feel and hear the call for change. And that means supporting sanctions that target the regime to change their behavior. So I think there is that possibility. A lot of our efforts focus on international companies, many of which do business outside the shores of the United States, in countries in Europe. And I think that those companies, as they see this activist movement, it's on their television right now, it's in the streets of Iran, that perhaps they'll change their behavior and at least I can guess whether or not it's prudent to continue to do business with that regime and the Revolutionary Guard Corps, obviously. But in terms of Russia, look, it's been no secret that at the UN Security Council that Russia and China have been the most difficult in terms of seeking further sanctions and further progress in both the Iran nuclear file and the North Korea nuclear file. Whereas I'm skeptical that Russia will be ultimately an overwhelmingly positive influence in this file, in this issue, there's hope, I think, and I think that we should continue to push our diplomatic overtures to Russia. I think that we as citizens can do even more.
Ambassador Wallace also explained the position of Arab states regarding Iran's nuclear dossier.
When I was at the United Nations, many moderate Arab state ambassadors who I was friendly with came to me and were very supportive of our effort. I think that the Arab world is truly concerned about the potential for a nuclear-armed Iran. It's no secret, it's always a whisper campaign about it because many of them have a hard time publicly decrying the notion of a nuclear-armed Iran.
Finally, in response to the question of Washington TV correspondent about what the ambassador imagined to be the best-case scenario, considering the post-election conditions in Iran, he responded,
"First and foremost, you have to have an Iranian regime that's willing to engage the international community, the United States, the European Union. Really, President Obama extended his hand in outreach in diplomacy to the Iranians. Iran has yet to respond to that outstretched hand, if you will. So I think first and foremost, the Iranians need to be willing to engage. Secondarily, I think that the international community, whether it's the UN or the IAEA, have indicated that Iran has avoided inspections and the like. So I think Iran has to take steps to come back into that inspection regime, allow inspectors in to certify that whatever they are doing, they're not in violation of the NPT, for example. and they're not engaging in behavior that is that will ultimately lead to a nuclear weapon. But the first part is being willing to sit at a table. I mean, whatever anyone thinks about the policy, President Obama did something unique and bold. When he was elected, he extended his outstretched hand to the Iranian people. I think in order to be effective, to have a real diplomatic solution here, the Iranian regime needs to extend an open hand to him.